work in business development for Sec3, which is a cybersecurity company with a focus on Web3 projects. So smart contract composing, a bit of large language model work, and a few other things there as well.
Hello, my name is Emma Miller. I am from Edinburgh, and I currently have the largest music NFT collection in the UK, and have built a community through the blockchain that have supported me. And I'll tell you more as we go along, but yeah, I'm an independent musician from Scotland on blockchain.
Hello, I'm Nick Duddy. My trade is marketing. I've been a marketer for almost 20 years, but I run I'm pretty sure it's the oldest crypto community in the world. It was Coinstrong, which was founded in 2012. So we are Bitcoin first because nothing else existed before that. A little bit of folklore. You wouldn't have Ethereum if it wasn't for Coinstrong because it's where Vitalik and Gavin Woods met.
So we'll start off with some kind of industry questions. So Boaz, I'll start with yourself. So what are the biggest misconceptions about the security of Web3 projects or companies?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions would be that Web3 applications are secure in the first place. Plenty of tragic tales that you hear, every cycle, every year, every month even, when it comes to hacks on on-chain applications or centralized exchanges. I have met two people now who lost a fortune in the Mt. Gox hack back in 2013 now, and who subsequently lost a fortune in FTX as well, which I think is a great example of how people don't learn, and as a result, not much changes in the space. And probably the worst crypto hack ever, or the worst crypto catastrophe ever, is yet to happen. It'll probably happen maybe in a year or two from now. Everyone will look back and be like, "Oh, it was so obvious. Why did all this happen?" And then an even bigger one will happen next cycle. So human nature doesn't change, and as a result, Web3 applications, even if they are based on an immutable ledger, they can be very unsafe. So always assume that in Web3, it's like you're in a Western movie. You're walking into a saloon in the middle of the outback, and there's all sorts of mercenaries and villains and pirates around. I always like to say that if Web3 was a market, or crypto market was a real physical market, you wouldn't want to walk in unless you were carrying a gun. And I think that's just worth of advice. So assuming security is something that can do you an awful lot of harm in the space.
Well, actually, so following on from that one, another question, like what advice would you give to an entrepreneur or developer who's maybe got their own project or is looking to launch when approaching security?
Yeah, very good question, and I don't want to occupy too much time. Give a very, very long answer there. When it comes to building inside of Web3, probably two major points. I think on the philosophical side, when you are building an application, for example, inside Web3, or a product that is directly plugged into the Web2, Web3 nexus, it'd be very important to not just think as though you were a builder who's actually trying to provide a good or a service to a user and do some good in space. You also need to think, after you've done some of the building, you need to think like a vandal. So how would you try and destroy what you just made if you were a user who just for some reason really hated it? And this doesn't even mean somebody who's trying to profit from the destruction of your application. You will find in this space there are some people who really just they just want to watch the world burn. So you should just try and think of somebody who had a lot of time and even had a lot of money, how they would try and destroy your project if they really wanted to. And with that in mind, to try and build in the necessary safeguards against that in any of the scenarios that you come up with. I think that's all on the philosophical side. The more practical side, software architecture is very, very important. While you may be able to ship something very fast and you just want to get it out the door and you want to show the world what you can do, it is very important to bear in mind there's probably a longer term plan for what you want if what you ship is it successful. As a result, how are you going to ship the upgrades and how are you going to further develop the project? It's important that when you're building, depending on what you're building, to try and do it in a modular fashion so that you can test all the different elements of it individually rather than having to test everything at once. So for example, if you do get the project audited or you just have a friend look over it, whatever it is, when you're about to ship, just remember that if you are just making this huge blob of code, if you do want to update it in the future, you will then have to audit all of it all over again. Unlike if you just made it in a more modular fashion where you could update specific parts of it and test specific parts of it independently. So yeah, think like a vandal and try to build with long-term architecture in mind. Because even in the case of building more modularly, it will save you a huge amount of time if you can test things independently and you can update different elements individually rather than having to do everything all at once.
Thank you, Boaz. So we'll move on to yourself, Emma. What would you say are the current blockchain-based trends in the music industry that help artists secure their intellectual property?
The current trends in the music industry and blockchain, I would say zero. The music industry are the last industry to ever embrace new technology or new marketplaces. They did that when streaming came along, they resisted and resisted and resisted. And whilst the book industry accepted that their books were being downloaded for free, they cut a deal for about $7.99 a month for one book a month. The industry's version of that is $10.99 a month for all the music in the world. So we have completely devalued music in our current traditional system. And the reason I'm on the blockchain with a lot of other independent artists is because major labels are facing a huge, huge barrier to entry. They don't understand maybe the marketplace and the tech side, but in terms of IP, royalties are so complicated in music. There's so many stakeholders. You've got the songwriters, the producers, people that might own fractions of the master rights. So you need to sign off from all of those people. You need all parties to then embrace the tech. Me as a solo artist, I own rights to everything. I'm not doing the bureaucracy of asking everyone. So there's a huge feeling of like renaissance of the arts and music on the blockchain. It's a kind of niche scene in the music scene. But yeah, I mean, the innovation that's happening really is trying to bring value back to music through it being a digital certifiable asset is one value, and I see the other value being the community and the kind of fan base. So music industry innovation, zero, independent artists kind of embracing that side. The IP is still kind of unknown as we go along because the IP infrastructure in the industry is lacking, I'd say.
And do you feel as though artists are quite open and receptive to the idea of using blockchain to monetize their music then? Is that something that a lot of people are talking about in the music industry?
I don't think, I mean, I get approached kind of as a consultant to come and be talking to labels, but it's very tentative. They don't really know how to take it further. Where the industry see things going financial opportunities is through the superfan and through managing to activate a small network of your fan base who are going to invest more in you, who want the experience, who want the collectibles. But I think artists, funnily enough, I did a headline show in Edinburgh last year and I went around various music outlets giving out a poster and I would mention the blockchain side and watching the body language change and the shift. I was like, oh wow, like I do live in a bubble in my Web3 scene and all of my musicians that have kind of navigated, who are all kind of fully independent artists. There's a huge perception about what the blockchain is and about what the space is. And I think that average artist and average musician would be highly resistant to coming into that space just through a lack of education side of things. So it's really been this niche group of like a handful of artists that have come in off the back of the pandemic, off the back of live music shutting down, and off the back of labels not being a safe bet anymore. You can be dropped in a second from a major label.
So work to be done.
Work to be done on that side, yeah.
Right, perfect. Well, let's move on to yourself, Nick. So here's a question for you, industry specific. What was your opinion on the Cointelegraph's intern's tweet about the SEC Bitcoin approval? Was it a forgivable mistake, or does it represent a systematic risk?
So, I did get given this question in advance, and I do not know what you're talking about. So, it didn't hit me, it didn't bother me. I think for the most of it, all the stuff comes out of the media is noise, and I filter the noise quite well. I'm just looking for signal all the time, so it will have got some people in trouble. But it's not the first time it's happened. People tweet things out, put things live. I used to work for the Define, if anybody knows, it's a DeFi specific news site, and even they got it wrong at times and had to retract things. So it's just part of the thing. So it's actually a problem with the media industry, where they're always chasing, trying to be first with the news and stuff like that. So they're always getting things out too quickly, and so the problem's not with crypto. The problem's with the media industry.
So how does CoinScrum then approach, like if you've got something that you're looking to report on that's maybe pressing and you're wanting to kind of break the story, like how do you approach that without getting this kind of
we don't really do that, and we don't really do that sort of news stuff. So we're more about community of crypto OGs, more or less. That's the best way to describe it. So if there's anything about CoinScrum, it's slow and steady and just keep going. It's not about jumping on the next trend, unless you're very sophisticated, and then you can be a proper DJ. But I think for the most of it, everybody should, before they get into anything crypto-wise, learn about Bitcoin, read Bitcoin paper, understand why we're actually here, because nothing else would exist without Bitcoin, and go from that point on.
Education was something that CoinScrum had been looking at recently as well, wasn't it?
Education's always been at the core of CoinScrum. People come and teach a community, and that's me included. I'm never on stage, by the way. This is like my first time on stage. I'm usually behind and getting people to be on stage, because I just want to hear what the smart people in the room saying. That's what CoinScrum's very good at. Just bringing the smart people in and go, tell us what you think. And then we go, all right, actually, I never thought about it like that.
Right, so we're going to ask some AI related questions now, because I know it's obviously a buzzword at the moment, but it is something that's significantly impacting the landscape in which we live. So if we ask yourself, Emma, first of all, like what are your thoughts on AI and its potential impact in the music industry?
It's funny because being in the Web3 space and having every day I'm usually end up in a Twitter space chatting, I am much more open-minded to the idea of AI and to the idea of it kind of coming into the music industry and potentially being a fantastic tool for artists to use to streamline how you make music. Where I personally still feel very uncomfortable is the idea that, which will happen, of fully AI generated music kind of being pumped onto streaming services, and we're almost being prepared for that stage. There is a lot of, most people are making music from their bedroom. There's a lot of computer generated music or music that is made from not organic instruments, that's absolutely cool. But when that is not made from a person as well, and it becomes monetizable, and now there is no artist living anywhere on streaming services, it's just kind of AI cash cow for other content for platforms that were built by artists. I think that's going to be something to come to terms with. But the more we travel into that area of AI, I do think it's inevitable. I think we need to kind of embrace it and learn how to use it. I think it's one of the reasons why there's vinyl revival, why people are searching for experiences, is because eventually you do reach a capacity where you want real human connection and you want to actually feel like you are listening to a person or experiencing something real. So I think the more that AI kind of infiltrates and comes through, the more we will start really searching for those human-to-human connections, and that is when having a community and being able to offer the live experience. I think the live experience with music is so important. So I think there's multiple ways to keep alive and a heartbeat within the arts. But AI, I do see being quite a strong feature in music, actually.
And have you experimented with AI when it comes to composition or music writing?
I'm the least technological person on planet Earth. Like, I can't believe I'm in the space, in the blockchain space. So I probably won't be, I dabble with the chat GPT, if that's what it's called, to figure, some strategies out. But AI, I don't know if I'll bring myself to dabble in the AI music. Okay,
no, fair enough. Right, Boaz, we'll ask you, how has AI impacted business practices at Sec3? And what areas of the business could benefit most from AI integration?
Okay, so on the security side, there's quite a few different angles to this that we could explore. I think, actually just as an anecdote, I remember meeting a bloke last year, some conference or another, and he said he was in the auditing business as well. And I was like, oh, very interesting. What languages are you proficient in your auditing? And he said, oh, all of them. I was like, wow, you must be a very talented man indeed. Tell me more. And anyway, it turned out this guy was just copying and pasting code into ChatGPT and asking to find any vulnerabilities. And this only made me even more cynical regarding the real aggregate impact of AI, or what is termed AI, in both the space and the broader world. I think at the end of the day, nothing will replace manual auditing. Large language models are just, they can only really look at past performance and then try to get future results, as the financial advice disclaimer always goes. So anything they come up with is a remix, and of course the human brain is always coming up with new things. So at the end of the day, a large language model is never going to be perfect at finding every future vulnerability. So any use of large language models in the security space should always be done in conjunction with somebody who really knows what they're doing. As an aside, at Sec3, we've actually had a lot of success in breaking large language models. One of our co-founders, Professor Shane at Northwestern University, is Professor of Artificial Intelligence, and he published a paper not too long ago where they were looking at custom GPTs, and by effectively jailbreaking them using prompt injections, you could uncover both the source prompt, which is the IP behind that particular GPT, so very sensitive data, or the data it can be trained on, which of course would violate the data privacy. So I think it was 200 custom GPTs they analyzed, or maybe slightly more than that, and over 95% of cases they were able to seize the original prompt or some of the data it can be trained on. So it's interesting that the models themselves aren't actually that secure, and people are wanting to use them and integrate them into their security practices. That said, there are applications for large language models in Web3. I would generally say when you are training the models, it needs to be a pretty narrow data set for the results to be very effective. In fact, so Sec3, we launched OWL last year. So OWL is the open source Web3 native large language model. So it's the first open source large language model that is trained exclusively on Web3 data. So it's trained on Ethereum transactions. As a result, using it, you can detect things like MEV transactions with a very, very, very high rate of accuracy, it's 98%. And you can also infer a lot of information from it with a relatively high success rate. So there are applications for large language models in Web3, but at the end of the day, the people who are trying to crack protocols, the people who are trying to steal all funds for other projects, etc., they are not. It's always cutting edge. There's the bleeding edge of development, and you can't just rely on a large language model.
Thank you. Yourself, Nick. So, considering some sectors are at a greater risk of AI displacement, do you view AI as a major risk or benefit when it comes to journalism?
I think it's an all. Because I don't think you're going to replace journalists. You may replace news organizations that produce really bad news. But you're not going to replace investigative journalism and things like that. And it's kind of like I said in music. It's a race to the ball. And you're going to want humans in the mix, right? You're not going to ChatGPT and stuff, that's quite useful. But if you're an expert in the thing and you're using it, you can see the problems in the information it's spits out. So, like we use it on our site, and that's your follow-up question, but I was using it in the site purely because I wanted to get a couple of pages on. I couldn't be bothered writing the content for the content writer at the end. So that was it, right? From a marketing perspective. But in saying that, another reason I think it's not going to be much of a risk is news sites need Google to rank their sites so they get traffic for the most of it. And Google just did a massive update a couple of weeks ago that just destroyed a whole bunch of AI generated sites. These are the AI generated sites like when GPT chat came out, went from 0 to like 50 million views in a week. And they're all going now. They're all and there's loads of SEOs that are like dying because of business. So I don't see it as that much of an actual risk, because in the end, humans want human interactions and stuff like that. You can spot the difference, I think, if you spend enough time playing around with ChatGPT and other, I mean, AI art, a good example, you can pretty much tell it's AI art, right? Don't know why they can't spot it. Can you?
It's getting pretty good.
It's getting good,
I
but
think with like I think there was a Super Bowl advert recently where they'd taken the likeness of someone on TikTok without their permission, and they were advertising Viagra pills on the Super Bowl, and it was like uncanny. So it is getting frightening.
yeah, I feel that the biggest problems with privacy aspect, where do they get the concepts? How much of my data do they use? Why can't I get paid for that? Because that's my information that they've used, and nobody's standing up for us in that sense. Same with all the artists. It's nice to see all the artists start to sue all the language model companies, because they didn't pay for any of the information that they got and then monetized it for millions.
Thank you. Right, I think we'll go back to blockchain now. So, I mean, I think we touched upon some of this earlier, Emma, but obviously one of the main motivating factors for musicians when it comes to blockchain is you're removing the middlemen when it comes to monetization. But what do you think are the main barriers to entry currently for artists, and how do you think they need to approach removing those? Like what steps are required in order to make it more accessible?
I think when it gets to the barriers, there's so many barriers coming into the space at the moment, not just for the artists, but if you're a music fan, unless you have taken the time to educate yourself, or the artist is using a platform where you have a custodial wallet, which is effectively you're getting involved with crypto really at that stage. I think, yeah, there's a great number of barriers. I'm just touching on the security side. I remember like a couple of years ago creating my first MetaMask, and at the moment I had to press the signature for the first time. I called 5 different people to make sure I was allowed to press sign off, and that's just because I was a newbie in learning. So I think there are huge barriers, and the main one being the playability of music in Web3. There is not a lot of music in Web3. So there's platforms that exist such as Sound.xyz, and there's a decent amount of music on there that you can maybe have a playlist experience. Everyone's used to listening in a streaming style where you have a lot of music all at once, kind of shuffled along. For me personally, my kind of foundational collection is called Artifacts, and it revolves around 5 songs. And I suspect that they have not been played very often because they all live in their separate NFT wallets. So to play the song, you'd have to go into the NFT, click play, come out of the NFT, go to the next one and click play, which is not a fun experience if you're wanting to listen to the music. I token gated a playlist on SoundCloud and gave it to my collectors. I'm now about to bring my songs onto streaming just so that people can hear them. And almost kind of as an experiment to see if I can then elevate my project to show that listening is different to owning the NFT. So yeah, there are multiple barriers, and I think it's the user experience for now, for both artists and for fans. But yeah, you can definitely find very passionate people that already exist in Web3 that are very familiar with the tech. And I educated myself through joining many Twitter spaces. And that's always an option. I run a Wednesday space way, if anybody wants to come and hang on a little music site, every Wednesday I run a space at 5 p.m. UK on Twitter with my friend Josh, and we rotate every week and we talk about Go3 music. So if you want to tentatively come into the music niche, then please come over there.
Thank you. So Nick, we'll go to Nick. So CoinScrum was obviously very early in the space, as you mentioned earlier on. But how does it compete for attention today with all the other media platforms that exist?
I guess we don't necessarily compete because they're after like large volume numbers, and we don't really do that. We're after like high quality speakers, guests, high quality audience. We did a meetup once where somebody managed to get through our filter and tried to pitch an ICO to our audience. Somebody stood up and said, "You need to be very careful when you come in here and do that." So that's like the sort of audience that we've got, that are very well educated. So we are not at all interested in mass media. We're like, fundamentally, we're kind of like builder mentality. Like, we're just trying to get things done. We love Bitcoin. We think everything's pretty much going to end up Bitcoin in the end. That's not to say that other chains aren't providing values, and I'm a maximalist, and you won't find many other maximalists speaking like that, right? So it'll be interesting, but fundamentally, back to your question, instead of me going on a maxi rant. Yeah, we don't compete with them in the same way. They don't have the same. You can't compete with our history and our background. That's just that. It's very, very difficult to do that. So yeah, we just stay quiet, humble, keep pushing on, get everybody building. Everybody check out Bitcoin. That's it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I ask a question now just now? What does success look like for the three different bits? I mean, where are you aiming to go?
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, financial success.
Yes, I know this is an ongoing theme.
Yeah.
It's not going to look this. I don't know what it looks like, but it's not going to look like your generations in that sense. It's going to be quite different. And I think we are at a crux in society where in 20 years, the world's not going to look anything like it did now. So I can't say to you now what success in that sense looks like. I mean, I've got a family, so success is just raising my family, making sure they're safe, happy, and fed.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily trying to be like the next Elon Musk.
So what's numbers like?
What do you mean?
How many people are consuming your content?
That's not how we operate. So
Right.
our revenue model, we get paid by the biggest foundations in Bitcoin to build content around them and keep the Bitcoin narrative going.
Right.
So that's how we do it.
Okay.
All of us that are the core guys in CoinScrum are all quite sophisticated. I would say I'm going to say I'm the least sophisticated.
Well, I wondered about
Right.
government state, you know.
No, well, but that's
Is that what you get?
that's a very Bitcoin mentality, though.
Yeah.
Right? It's very much decentralized, pushback on the eroding of our lifestyles
Yeah.
based around, frankly, the US dollar and everything else that comes with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that mentality, the Galgale mentality, which is a community in Glasgow, if you don't know it,
Yeah.
look for Galgale, it's a very important community in Glasgow. They're not at all Bitcoiners, and I can't convince them on it, but their mentality aligns up with mine.
So do I mind if I ask what your community looks like? Well, how many people is?
How many people in my community? So the music scene is a niche within a niche.
Right, okay.
So what's fantastic for me as an independent artist is a very small community. I've been able to support me directly. So with my project Artifacts, which is like 1,000 pieces, there's about just under 200 owners of that entire collection.
Right.
And you do see that quite commonly in traditional spaces when you do a crowdfunder. There's a very small percentage of people actually end up reaching a phenomenal amount of resources or money because they believe in the project. So across my collections, I've maybe got 400 or 500 collectors of my work. But it's a small kind of community that I've tapped into, but it's the re-evaluation of music that's given me so much more than a much vaster. There's this common expression in the music industry of 1,000 true fans, and the idea being if you have 1,000 true fans, within that there's going to be a percentage that ideally spend $100 on you per year, and that is how you make your income. Within the blockchain space, because of the way that I have valued my music in that space, it's taken me a lot fewer people to kind of create that sustainable model. And I do see it as a sustainable model just because of the culture and this kind of collective of artists that I've become part of. Who knows where the market will go? But right now, that's what is sustaining me kind of in the last couple of years. And I'm also within kind of what I have a Patreon. I try and diversify and do multiple things, but my main income has come from the blockchain.
Do you have a genre for the music?
A genre, like kind of folky singer-songwriter. So there's lots of rap, there's lots of hip hop on the blockchain. I'm kind of probably one of the few singer-songwriters.
Great. Boaz, if we talk about Sec3 again for a minute, so how is Sec3 positioned in the industry amongst when compared with other security firms? And what, if so, if you believe it's one of the leaders, then why is that the case?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of, I would say arguably smart contract security is a very niche industry still inside the cybersecurity space. So even though there are some large companies who manage to raise a lot of money, this is still very much a niche, which is quite representative of the broader crypto space. So Sec3 comes from sort of a mix of capture the flag winning white hat hacking skill, and then combining that with elite academic expertise. So we have quite a small team overall, but everybody that we have is either coming from a very strong sort of intellectual academic background on these computer science PhD route, or there are people who are proven to be very good at capture the flag competitions. So for the white hat hacking skill set. In terms of what we can offer, it's really quite broad. We used to be very Solana specific, so there's a lot of Rust work there. Now we still do mostly Rust and Rust derivatives, but we can also do things like zero knowledge, MPC, that kind of thing as well. Yeah, I don't know exactly how you want me to answer the question, other than just talk about sort of what our general skill set is. But I would say that in security, and this applies to all security industries, both cyber, physical, etc., reputation is everything. And while there are an awful lot of security companies and smart contract auditors out there, having a good reputation is something it takes a long time to build, and it takes no time at all to ruin, and you really need to be going for companies which have a very good reputation. So I don't want to name any names, but there are plenty of cowboys in the space. You obviously need to be very careful. Sadly, there's a lot of misalignment of incentives inside of Web3, where a lot of projects just want to say that they've been audited. Doesn't matter what the audit is, doesn't matter how good it is, they just want to be able to say that the code has been audited. As a result, use that for their marketing, because then users can think it's safe. But going back to my very first response, you need to assume everything in Web3 is unsafe until proven otherwise.
Yeah. Right, thank you. So what we're going to do is we'll have some final closing questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So to ask yourself, Emma, are you involved in any new exciting projects?
Involved in any exciting projects? Well, the next vision for me, so far I've released on Ethereum, and I'm releasing my next project on Solana in some form or other. And I'm heading to New York in the first week of April to do a show with my friend Violetta Zeroni for our collectors out there. And this August, I'm bringing the very first blockchain music event to Scotland, where you're very welcome to join me. I'm hosting a music event at Gordon Castle up in the northeast in Murrayshire, where I'm from. And I have 25 of my kind of VIP collectors who, for transparency, are people that have really spent thousands of dollars on me over the past kind of year. And that is my kind of celebration of them, is they're flying from Hawaii, Hamburg, Romania, all over the world to come spend the weekends together doing music, whiskey experiences, walking in the kind of beautiful beaches from my area. And on top of that, they were encouraging me to do a public event. So with their kind of blessing, I have opened the doors, and with Matt Belmont, who's from the band Belmont, and Josh Savage, who's a fantastic independent artist, we are doing a showcase at Gordon Castle and a kind of panel with musicians talking about blockchain and music and community. So it's going to be very lovely. You're very much welcome to come discover it. I've not put tickets out there yet, but my thing is emmamiller.xyz if anybody wants to find my website and mailing list and all those things. I do try and sprinkle the mailing list with little bits of blockchain every now and then, but really my whole year is revolving around this August project for my collectors and also releasing a debut album into early next spring.
Terrific, thank you very much. So Nick, we'll ask you a final question as well. So what industry developments are you most looking forward to this year?
Bitcoin's going to be insane for the next 12 months. It's going to be everything we've done up till now for the time. You know how when you take the Amazon price graph and you zoom it out and all those little ones are tiny? Bitcoin's going there. It's going to go that far up. Ordinals are going to drive it. Ordinals are an incredible innovation on the platform, but on top of that, the amount of layer 2s that are being built, like I can't even keep up with it. Like I'm looking for 10 other people. They're curating lists and they've all got different layer 2s in it, and I'm like, this is what's going to be crazy. We've not seen anything like this before. It is hard money. It is secure. It's trusted. I have no idea what the world's going to look like as it starts to take hold. Me personally, I'm actually building something on Solana. So I am actually, but I'm very open-minded, right? You know, like you can do other things, but I believe we need Bitcoin as a layer. And I think we're about to start the narrative that has been told to us. I say that like the people have been around for ages about Bitcoin hasn't materialized in metrics yet, but the story looks like it's moving in the right direction. And I'm very happy to see that because it's been a rocky few years.
Perfect. Thank you. And Boaz, yourself. So from a professional perspective, what are your goals for the coming months?
A very good question. I'm not the most, I don't generally think too far into the future. And in crypto, of course, everything moves at a very, very fast rate. So I would probably say just making the most out of what this halving cycle brings us. I think there's probably going to be a lot of unexpected surprises as nothing ever seems to go exactly as planned in crypto. So you know, if you wind your memories back, everyone thought that it was Tether that was going to collapse rather than Terra, and it was Binance that was going to collapse rather than FTX. And yet, of course, fate just has a definite sense of irony. So you can never really be too prepared for what happens next. But I'm sure it'll be very entertaining no matter what.
Okay, thank you very much. So everyone, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you to Boaz, Emma, and Nick.